In the heart of the Bitterroot Mountains, where the pines whispered secrets to the wind and the rivers carved stories into the earth, there lived a bobcat named Sable. Unlike her kin, whose amber eyes gleamed with wary suspicion and whose snarls echoed through the valleys, Sable was a creature of peculiar warmth. Her fur, a tapestry of tawny gold and shadow-dark spots, shimmered under the dappled sunlight, but it was her spirit that truly set her apart. She did not stalk with menace or retreat into the solitude of the wild. Instead, Sable greeted every creature she met with a curious tilt of her head and a soft, rumbling purr that seemed to say, "I see you, and you are welcome." The forest folk spoke of her in hushed tones, their tales weaving a myth that bordered on reverence. The elk claimed she had once guided a lost calf back to its herd, her paws silent on the frost-kissed ground as she nudged the trembling creature through the snow. The ravens, ever the gossips, swore she had shared a freshly caught trout with a starving fox, her sharp teeth tearing the fish with precision before offering it without a hint of threat. Even the grisly old thorn, who brooded alone in his cedar grove, admitted grudgingly that Sable had once sat beside him through a stormy night, her presence a quiet comfort against the howling gale. But Sable's story began not in the forest's embrace but in a moment of loss. As a kitten, barely weaned from her mother's side, a wildfire had swept through the Bitterroot, a roaring beast of flame and smoke that devoured the ridge where her family denayed. The blaze left nothing but ash and silence in its wake. Sable, small and singed, had stumbled from the wreckage, her heart pounding with fear. She should have perished, as so many others did, but a strange instinct guided her. A pull toward connection, toward life. She found refuge with a wandering badger, who, despite his gruff demeanor, shared his burrow and taught her to dig for roots when prey was scarce. From him, she learned that survival was not just claws and teeth, but trust in the unexpected kindness of others. Years passed, and Sable grew into a lithe, powerful creature, her movements fluid as the rivers that crisscrossed her home. Yet her heart remained open, a beacon in a world where suspicion often reigned. The forest was not always kind. Predators vied for territory, and prey animals fled at the faintest rustle. But Sable moved through it all with a grace that disarmed even the most guarded. She would curl up beside a nervous hare, her eyes half closed to signal peace, or leap onto a low branch to chatter with a squirrel, her tail flicking playfully. Her presence was a paradox, a hunter who did not hunt to dominate, a solitary creature who sought companionship. One crisp autumn morning, as the leaves burned crimson and gold, Sable's path crossed with a human, a rarity in these wilds. The girl, no older than 16, was named Alara, a wanderer from the valley below. Her clothes were tattered, her boots caked with mud, and her eyes carried a weight that spoke of burdens too heavy for her years. She had fled her village after a feud tore her family apart, seeking solace in the mountain's vastness. Sable, perched on a lichen-covered boulder, watched as Alara stumbled through a clearing, her breath ragged, her hands clutching a worn leather journal. Most bobcats would have vanished into the underbrush at the scent of a human, but Sable's curiosity burned brighter than her caution. She leaped down, her paws silent on the pine needles, and approached Alara with that familiar tilt of her head. The girl froze, her hand reaching for a stick, but Sable's low purr, a sound like the hum of a distant stream, stilled her fear. For a long moment, they regarded each other. The girl with wide, wary eyes, the bobcat with a gaze that seemed to pierce through to her soul. Alara spoke first, her voice trembling but soft. "You're not like the others, are you?" she whispered, as if afraid the words might shatter the moment. Sable blinked slowly, her tail curling around her paws, and in that gesture, Alara saw an invitation. She sank to her knees, the journal slipping from her hands, and wept. Sable did not flee. Instead, she padded closer, her warmth brushing against Alara's trembling form, and rested her head against the girl's shoulder. It was a gesture so tender, so utterly unwild, that Alara's sobs quieted, replaced by a fragile calm. For days, Sable shadowed Alara through the forest, guiding her to hidden springs where the water was sweet and to groves where huckleberries hung heavy on the branches. Alara, in turn, shared bits of dried bread from her pack, laughing when Sable nibbled them with delicate precision. The girl began to speak to the bobcat, her words spilling out like a river breaking free. She told of her village, of a father lost to greed and a mother consumed by sorrow, of a journal filled with dreams she feared would never take root. Sable listened, her amber eyes steady, as if she understood every word. But the forest was not a place of endless peace. Rumors reached Sable's keen ears, carried by the wind and the chatter of ravens, of a shadow moving through the bitterroot. A rogue wolf, driven mad by hunger and exile, had begun to stalk the ridges. Its howls were jagged, its scent sharp with desperation. The forest folk grew tense. The elk moved in tighter herds, the squirrels vanished into their high nests. Sable sensed the change, her ears twitching at every snap of a twig, but she did not abandon Alara. The girl, unaware of the danger, continued her wanderings, sketching in her journal and whispering to Sable about a world beyond the mountains. One evening, as the sun bled orange across the sky, the wolf's scent grew sharp and close. Sable's fur bristled, but her eyes remained fixed on Alara, who sat by a small fire, her journal open to a drawing of the bobcat. The girl's laughter rang out, bright and unguarded, and Sable's heart clenched. She knew the wolf would come for Alara. Humans were easy prey, soft and slow. But Sable also knew she could not fight the wolf alone. Her strength lay not in her claws but in her bonds, in the trust she had woven with the forest's creatures. Under the gathering dusk, Sable slipped away, her paws a whisper against the earth. She sought Old Thorn, the grizzly, whose massive form could turn even a wolf's courage to dust. She found him by his cedar grove, his fur silvered by moonlight. Her purr was urgent now, her eyes pleading. Old Thorn huffed, his breath steaming in the cold, but Sable's gaze held him. She had sat with him through storms. Now she asked him to stand with her. The grizzly rose, his bulk shaking the ground, and followed her back to the clearing. Alara was still by the fire, unaware of the eyes glowing in the dark. The wolf crouched low, its teeth bared, ready to spring. But before it could move, Sable's purr rose to a yowl, a sound not of fear but of defiance. Old Thorn lumbered into the clearing, his roar splitting the night. The wolf froze, then fled, its tail low, its hunger no match for the grizzly's might. Alara gasped, clutching her journal, her eyes darting between the bobcat and the bear. Sable returned to her side, her purr soft again, as if to say, "You are safe." In that moment, Alara understood. Sable was no ordinary creature. She was a bridge between the wild and the wounded, a guardian who fought not with teeth but with trust. The girl reached out, her fingers brushing Sable's fur, and whispered, "Thank you." The bobcat's eyes gleamed, and for the first time, Alara felt the weight of her grief lift, if only a little. But the forest held more secrets, and Sable's story was far from over. Deep in the bitterroot, something older than the trees was stirring, a force that watched Sable with eyes as ancient as the mountains themselves. It had seen her kindness, her courage, and it had plans for her yet. The Bitterroot Mountains exhaled their secrets in the hush of dawn, where mist clung to the pines like a lover's whisper. Sable, the bobcat with a heart too vast for her lithe frame, padded alongside Alara, the human girl whose tattered journal held dreams as fragile as the frost on the ferns. The two had become inseparable, a pair bound by an unspoken pact forged in the firelight of that perilous night when Old Thorn's roar had sent the rogue wolf fleeing. Yet the forest, for all its beauty, was no sanctuary of endless peace. Something ancient stirred in its depths, a presence older than the granite peaks, its gaze heavy with purpose. Sable felt it in the prickle of her fur, in the way the raven's chatter grew sharp and urgent. She did not snarl, but her amber eyes narrowed, sensing a story yet unwritten. Alara, unaware of the forest's undercurrents, had begun to change. The weight of her grief, once a stone in her chest, was softening under Sable's quiet companionship. She sketched more boldly now, her journal filling with images of the bobcat. Sable leaping across a stream, her tail a playful arc. Sable curled beside a doe, their breaths mingling in the cold air. The girl's laughter, once rare, now danced through the trees, and Sable's purr answered it, a melody of trust. They shared meals of berries and roots, and when Alara sang, a soft, halting tune from her village, Sable's ears twitched, as if memorizing the notes. But the forest's pulse was shifting, and Sable's instincts, honed by years of survival, whispered of a coming trial. One morning, as the sun pierced the canopy in golden shafts, Sable led Alara to a hidden glade where the air shimmered with an otherworldly light. At its center stood a stone, ancient and moss-covered, carved with runes that pulsed faintly, like the heartbeat of the earth. Alara gasped, her fingers tracing the symbols, their shapes unfamiliar yet stirring something deep within her. Sable circled the stone, her purr low and cautious, her eyes fixed on the shadows beyond the glade. The ravens had spoken of this place, calling it the heart of the bitterroot, a nexus where the forest's spirit dwelled. They warned of its guardian, a creature neither beast nor god, whose will shaped the mountain's fate. As Alara knelt before the stone, her journal opened to a blank page. The air grew heavy, the light dimming as if the sun itself held its breath. From the shadows stepped a figure, a lynx larger than Sable, its fur silver as moonlight, its eyes twin pools of starlight that seemed to hold the weight of centuries. This was the guardian, the forest's ancient sentinel, whose name was lost to time but whose presence commanded awe. It did not snarl, but its silence was a force, pressing against Alara's chest, making her breath catch. Sable stepped forward, her body low, not in submission but in readiness, her purr a steady hum of defiance. The guardian spoke, its voice a ripple in the air, felt more than heard. You, Bobcat, who embraces all, have brought a human to the heart. Why? Sable's tail flicked, her gaze unwavering. She could not speak as humans did, but her eyes told a story of trust, of a girl whose heart was mending, of a bond that defied the forest's laws. Alara, trembling, clutched her journal and whispered, "She saved me. She showed me I'm not alone." The guardian's eyes shifted to the girl, piercing, unyielding, and for a moment, the glade was still, the only sound Sable's soft purr, a thread of courage in the silence. The guardian revealed a truth that chilled the air. The heart of the bitterroot was fading. The forest's life, its rivers, its creatures, its very breath, was tied to the stone, and its light was dimming, poisoned by a creeping darkness born of greed and discord from the human world below. The rogue wolf had been but a symptom, a shadow of this greater malaise. The guardian had watched Sable, seen her weave trust where fear once ruled, and now it offered a choice. Sable could bind her spirit to the heart, restoring its light at the cost of her freedom, or she could walk away, leaving the forest to wither. Alara's eyes widened, her voice breaking. "No, she can't." But Sable's purr silenced her, steady and sure. The bobcat stepped toward the stone, her paws brushing the runes, which flared brighter at her touch. She turned to Alara, her amber eyes soft, and pressed her head against the girl's hand. A final gesture of love. Alara sobbed, her journal falling to the ground, its pages fluttering open to a drawing of Sable, radiant and alive. The guardian watched, its starlight eyes unreadable, as Sable made her choice. But the forest was not done with surprises. As Sable's paws touched the stone, a tremor shook the glade, and the runes blazed with a light so fierce it blinded Alara. When her vision cleared, Sable stood unchanged, her fur aglow, but the stone was cracked, its light spilling into the earth like a river. The guardian's voice rumbled, tinged with something like awe. "You have not bound yourself, Bobcat. You have freed the heart." Sable's kindness, her unwavering trust, had done what no sacrifice could. It had awakened the forest's own strength, its creatures' unity, its will to endure. The glade pulsed with life, the trees stretching taller, the air humming with energy. Alara, tears streaming down her face, knelt beside Sable, who purred as if nothing had changed. The guardian bowed its head, a rare gesture, and spoke once more. "The forest is yours to roam, Sable, and the girl is its voice. Tell the world below what you have learned here." With that, it vanished, its form dissolving into the mist. Alara and Sable returned to the forest's edge, the girl's journal now filled with a story not just of survival but of hope. She would return to her village, not to mend what was broken but to build anew, carrying Sable's lesson. That trust could heal, that a single act of kindness could ripple through a world. Sable, ever the wanderer, remained in the Bitterroot, her purr a beacon for the lost, her heart a bridge between the wild and the human. And so, the bobcat who did not snarl became a legend, her story carried by the wind, whispered by the pines, and etched in the heart of a girl who had found her way home.